Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Thank you for joining me today. My friend Erik Sandstrom is going to read his Where I'm From poem in just a minute when he joins us. I'm sure many of you, like me, have a heavy heart today because of everything that's going on in the world. And so I'm grateful for this conversation. Hi.
Hi.
How are you? I was just saying
Good.
that it's a little, my heart's a little heavy today because of all the things going on in the world. So I'm grateful to have this conversation to look forward to in your poem.
Well, I am too, by golly. And it is, we have to do what we have to do, to stay sane. So here we
Yes, and it's good to do self-care. Otherwise, we can't continue to be a positive force in the world if we don't take care of ourselves. And this is self-care for me.
Well, I'm glad to be part of it. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
You are my first male identifying guest. So I, it's not intentional. Men are
No.
welcome to join. It seems that maybe I have more friends that are women, and also they're more poetry inclined, maybe.
Well, that's probably
Can you
so.
answer for all men?
Yeah, definitely. I pride myself in being able to answer for all men.
Yes. So, okay, good. I'm ready. What's your
Oh.
answer?
Yes, no, I don't think so, but I can answer for myself at least.
Yeah.
So I think I'm all straightened out here.
Oh, yeah. Your
So,
background's very nice.
yes.
It's you're
So
not sitting on your child's bedroom floor, so congratulations to you.
one would never know, however. It's a really nice bedroom floor, by the way.
Yes, this is where I have internet and where I can close the door.
Yeah. Most importantly, yes,
Yeah.
closing the door.
Hmm. So this
Um,
is the chosen spot.
well, first of all, I'd like to say before anything how much I admire you, and I
Oh,
look to you as you're somebody who I look to who's just you just follow your heart, and you are like your character in Reborn, you're a warrior, and I appreciate you, and I've known you a long time, and it's been great to see how you have just blossomed. I mean, it's just amazing. So, hooray for
thank
you.
you. You're making me cry. Thank you. That means a lot to me. Um,
You're welcome.
Thank you for your decades of friendship.
Of course. Um,
Um,
to preface my poem, I would say a lot of the reference is to I grew up in a growing up meaning from about 2 to about 11 was in a small town in Colorado called Brighton, um, about 20 miles north of Denver. And that's where my heart is, even though I only lived there a short time. I think it's what um, goes into your heart the deepest is when you're that little and when you have those experiences. Like my son David was in Boulder, that I was glad that we lived in Boulder for about 10 years. I was glad that he had that opportunity to grow up in a smaller town, um, which was beautiful. It was a really great experience. And I know you lived there during that time, a part of that time anyway.
mhm.
And so just to give sort of a preface to that. So I will
All
read
right,
my
whenever you're
poem.
ready,
Okay, I will read my poem.
you can do it.
I am from the toy bins at the Ben Franklin Five and Dime, from a Mattel Fanner 50 and a tube of Tester's glue. I'm from a tiny bedroom, walls papered with photos from the pages of Carcraft and Hot Rod magazine. Safe, embracing, leaves from the backyard oak brush against my window screen. I am from the onions rotting in cicadas field, which we hurled at each other on our walks to school. I'm from the cramped family road trips in the blue 63 Volkswagen and Ed Sullivan on Sunday night at Grandpa and Grandma's. I'm from my father Bill, who dies the year I was born, my mom Margie with 2 sons to raise, and stepdad Clint, dutiful, restrained, and unknowable. I'm from quiet avoidance and whispered kindness. From if you fall into Fulton's ditch, you'll turn into a buttercup, to crying upstairs in a bucket. I'm from my Jewish mother and grandparents, being baptized as a Methodist, and a survivor of the Brighton Seventh-day Adventist Academy. Born in Denver, with a family tree reaching through Sweden and Eastern Europe, from Cheerios with blueberries to sun tea. From Grandpa riding the streetcar downtown to the Western Union building where he deciphered telegrams. From sitting in the car reading comics while Mom attended her medical vocabulary classes. I'm from decades of photos, gray and white, Kodachrome, and Polaroids, stored in containers in the closet. And my son's artwork on the wall, his school writing projects and drawings tucked away in folders for the day he shares them with his daughter. There you are.
Yay!
Yay!
What was the experience like of, you sort of spoke about it, that you felt like you were writing from Brighton or writing about Brighton. Did you make that choice consciously, or did it just seem like the choice was made without you?
The choice was made. I mean, that's my reference. Even though I spent lots of time in California, lots of time in Colorado, and time in Arizona, lived all around. Many of the places, I think we were in the same place at the same time. And so I think a lot about small town, being a kid in a small town, and I think I felt a certain amount of freedom. I mean, I could really go anywhere at any time. I could ride my bike anywhere without any kind of fear. And we had there was a downtown, there were 2 streets that crossed in the middle, Main Street and Bridge Street. And there was a toy store. There was a drugstore where you go to, you get comics. It had a fountain where you could go get a grape slush or or a hot dog or something. And Ben Franklin's, of course, which had, miles of these crazy toys that you never see anymore. And I think my mom actually worked at the Ben Franklin for a little bit. And this is when they didn't have cash registers. Someone would purchase something and they'd send some receipt up this kind of contraption that went up to the accountants that sat on the floor above looking outward. And they'd do something up there and then send it back down. And it was just, bizarre.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was very strange. And I think, and I think too about when I was, I mentioned Seventh-day Adventist Academy, and I mean, I had this really mixed kind of semi-religious background. Not that I was religious, but it's kind of just what we did. My mom worked for Seventh-day Adventist doctors who were amazing. They were like, healers. And she worked in the front desk, which is why she took medical vocabulary classes, so that she could, get up on the jargon so she could work there. And I didn't know many mothers at the time of my friends that actually worked. I think my mom was one of the few women then that I knew worked, although I'm sure there were others. I mean, there was Mrs. Carroll, who was the nurse at the doctor's office, and I later got a crush on one of her daughters in Seventh-day Adventist Academy.
Full circle.
Full circle. So yes, long story, that's kind of what I think about. And I think about being enamored with cars. I mean, I read, magazine after magazine. I made model car kits. I went to car shows when there was one available to go to. And this was, the period I lived in that period of time growing up was probably, very early 50s, and I think we moved to California in 1964, having suffered two cross-country, not cross-country, but from Colorado to California in our Volkswagen. So, and my stepdad would not stop, of course. There's always those stories. He would never stop. So we were in a Volkswagen, sometimes slept
Wouldn't have
overnight.
survived. I have to stop. I would have had so much anxiety, like, beforehand about a trip like that. I already did, even though I got to stop and go to the bathroom. But
Yeah, it was, we just pretty much went numb, we just, but then eventually we got to California, which was just crazy amazing after coming from Brighton. It was like, oh my gosh, swimming pools in the shape of, what's that?
kidney,
Yeah, the
kidney
kidney
shape.
bean shape. Yep. And the beach. And like, it just was colossal. So that
Well, that
was
drive is pretty dull
very dull.
from Denver to California.
It
And Vegas was probably just a little blip. It's not like it is now. There was something there, but nothing like there is now. And,
Absolutely.
have you been back to Brighton? What's it like? Is it just a
So
suburb
when
now?
we lived in Boulder, which we moved to Boulder in, I think, kind of the mid 80s, late 80s to Boulder. And then
88.
88,
Mm-hmm.
stayed there for 10 years. During that period of time, I did go back to Brighton a couple of times. It's changed, of course. When I was there, it was more kind of a farming community, even though it had, the county seat. It had a courthouse and a fairgrounds. So it had commerce. But now it's really more of a bedroom community to Denver. I mean, it's only, it's 20 miles away. So as Denver gets bigger, the distance between it becomes smaller and it all kind of blends. So.
Well, I think we have a national trend of sort of the rural areas moving towards cities or suburbs, and it's the money and the jobs and all the sort of funneling that way. And then the smaller towns out in the country, they don't have the same amount of money going into them. And there's
No, not at all.
obviously some tension over that in our country.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what was your experience of Boulder? I know you had a very wide range of experience in Boulder because we both lived there at the same time.
It was certainly smaller than moving there from Southern California. It was a shock. One of the biggest things for me was how wide it was. That was really disorienting. And how insular it felt. Like everyone seemed like they knew each other, which I guess is maybe true also where I grew up, but I knew everyone, so I wasn't as aware of it. I think the proximity to Denver was supposed to be a big deal, but compared to the proximity to Los Angeles, I was like, you guys, Denver's not that cool. I'm sure I was such a snob. I'm sure
Well, we
I
had a
had my
zoo.
California
There's a
chip
zoo.
on my shoulder. But I'm grateful for my time there. I'm grateful that I had a break from Southern California, particularly as I was going through so much personally and going through puberty. And I think it's probably why I don't have an eating disorder, because I was able to kind of step away from that kind of bodily perfection that a lot of people were displaying at that time everywhere. I guess they still are. But I think I could have gone a lot of places. It was I hated it moving. I didn't like moving freshman year of high school. It was very lonely. And, but I think it was a good experience for me. Ultimately, I think stepping away from the persona that I built for myself was fruitful, but it was very painful at the time because I did feel really secure in what I'd built, even though it might not have been who I was. It felt safe.
Right. I mean, it's what you knew,
Yeah.
know. And yeah, I mean, I think my son David felt a similar uprooting when he moved from Colorado. When I moved from Colorado in Boulder in the, I think the early 90s, you know, kind of back. And then he moved out and came out to California to finish sophomore year through the end of high school.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a huge transition for him. And I think he felt a lot of kind of what you talked about. And plus, you know, I wasn't super present, and it was difficult, I think, for to land there and not feel kind of 100% supportive. You know, when I wasn't able to be 100% present.
Mm-hmm. I think being present is one of the greatest challenges of life, and certainly of parenthood.
Absolutely.
I was just discussing that with my older son yesterday, because there's a lot going on in the world that now my kids are old enough that we talk about in detail, not just like, oh, there's some bad shit going on. Mm-hmm. FYI. It's like, you know, I have a teenager who's reading the news, wants to talk about why Putin's doing what he's doing. And you know, he's a monster isn't a sufficient explanation. So we need to get into it a bit more, but we were just talking about, you know, the challenge of being present and the worth of doing that. And that I grew up, and I think many of us grew up and are still in situations where I had a parent who gave me things, which is not nothing. It's something. Mm-hmm. It gave me a lot in life. But would I have liked him to be there? Like present? I would have liked that. That would have been meaningful to me.
Yeah.
But he couldn't be. You know, that wasn't on the menu.
That's the hard realization to come to is it just couldn't be. You know, it's not. I look at, you know, I like to think about. So I had a very, very kind of, as I mentioned in the poem, a very unknowable stepdad. He did his job. I mean, he showed up. My mom had 2 kids to raise. It was 1952 or 1, you know, in Colorado, and small town. So he showed up and he went to work and he did all the stuff you're supposed to do. But I just honestly can't remember ever a conversation that he started with me or a conversation we ever had at all. Mm-hmm. And so you want to say, you know, you want to get mad at that. You want to blame.
I think you have to at some point.
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, what the hell?
Secret tip.
Oh.
I think you have to maybe go through that at some point.
Well,
being mad.
Yes,
I did.
I think you're right.
I still am, but yeah, not all the time.
I need to learn a little bit more about rage. I think I'm not big on rage. Maybe I'll pick up some rage tips. So, but yes, you know,
I'm here for all your rage tips.
Thank you. Well, again, another point of admiration for you. But you get mad, you know, and you can talk again. And I read the things you talk about talking yourself out of feeling the pain and shame and feelings that you had, to talk yourself out of it, because it's not, you know, it's easy to do, you know. Oh yeah, well, they had all this going on. Oh yeah, well, you know, he was from Nebraska. Oh yeah, he was whatever, you know. But, you know, there you go. And
other people had it worse. Don't forget, other people had it worse. That's always a really important. That's an important ingredient in the denial soup. Other people had it worse.
That's right. Absolutely.
They did.
They were beaten by drunken dads or whatever.
Or they weren't. You know, they didn't have a level of privilege that I just had, that I was just born into by luck.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, so name your excuse for not being angry at having basically a silent dad your whole life. So, and then I get mad at myself, because I feel like I some of that inevitably has to wear off. You don't live in a house with somebody for I don't know how many years. I mean, I don't think I moved out when I was probably 20-ish.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time to be in a house with somebody who doesn't tell you or say anything. And then inevitably it's going to be part of you absorb that as part of your identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that my son struggles and has struggled with that part of me, that part that's removed, that's silent, that's constrained.
Mm-hmm.
And, and when I look back on it, you just want to, it's like you just want to weep because you say, how could I be the way that I was treated to my son, and as we've talked about, I couldn't be any other way. It's just where it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, every day I try to do something to get closer to being present,
Mm-hmm.
and I wish it were easier. I've always wanted to be able to maybe we'll drop acid, and that'd change everything.
There is a very large community of people who believe in medical, what is it? Like
Psychedelics.
hallucinogen. Yeah, there's like a
Mm-hmm.
word for it. I can't think of it, but yeah, like mushrooms, psychosilin
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. Yeah, they're big into it.
Psilocybin, whatever.
Psilocybin, yes, and
Yeah.
ayahuasca and all of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
No, I think you get stoned for a day, but I don't think it changes much long term.
I think maybe you can. I think much like any medical solution, it can give you access to that feeling that you want, that you want. And maybe if you use it wisely and under a doctor's care, it can give you that feeling. I don't know, but I don't know that there are tools for sure. And I mean, I was raised in a household that did not believe in mental health medicines, and
Mm-hmm.
over the years, knowing people who use them and how they've been life changing, my opinion on that has completely changed. I think they can improve your quality of life and make your life livable. So
Absolutely agree.
I that could also be true of psilocybin. I don't know, but I don't think there's a magic wand for anything. Um, but I think it is about little steps forward in everything. And these past few days, whenever I feel overwhelmed with the state of the world or the state of my life or the state of anything, I sort of just feel like, well, like who cares what I'm doing or what, it doesn't matter. And I mean, to be honest, critics of capitalism, colonialism would say that's how it's designed. It's designed to make us feel like we don't matter, so that we're so overwhelmed with just our daily existence that we can't rise up. And so I think there's truth in that. And so even if you're doing little things every day, you are speaking up, you are being present. Those are revolutionary acts.
Yes, I agree with you completely. I mean, the revolutionary act is to get up every day and just plunge ahead and not let them get you down, because that's the battle. The battle is there's so much to overwhelm you in
Yes.
this world. You cannot let it down. And I think there's also maybe an understanding of how much you can do and what you can do, where can you put your energy, and the things that you do personally, the things that you do with your children, the projects you involve yourself with, all the things that you talk about and communicate with, those are your weapons, so to speak.
Those are acts of resistance, right?
That's right. That's right. So yes, I agree with that. I hope that we get through this. I'm sure we will. I don't know what it's going to end up looking like, on the other side of this. But so much is in flux and in change right now. Who knows? Maybe it's a whole new world ahead. I'd like to feel positive about that.
Yes, and I was listening to Angela Davis just yesterday, and her words at the end of this long Black History Month about Black history. It's excellent. I recommend it to anyone. The Black history you weren't taught in school. Therefore, the American history you weren't taught in school. Angela Davis says, our goal is to recreate hope generation after generation after generation. It's not just about today or next week or next month or next year. This is the long haul.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we forget that, and we're so result oriented. If we can create hope, then we've done our job.
Yeah, one more day of getting up and again just saying I can do this.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I think about is when you're talking about history classes, that of course I was in small town 50s Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd sing the Columbus song, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, blah 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 blah, and it just floors me why people are so afraid of seeing what actually was so, and I understand people's anger at having the illusion dashed that, everything was just so hunky dory, but it wasn't. And when you look at how the world was built on the backs of slaves and on the backs of people who were oppressed,
and who had no choice in the matter.
No choice. I watched back to back, in the last 2 days. I watched Ben-Hur and Spartacus both.
Wow.
And yeah, I know, in itself a Herculean feat.
Yeah, but not one I can accomplish.
No, not many could.
No.
But what struck me again and again and again is, even with that, all this, the ancient civilized worlds were built on the backs of people who were brutalized and enslaved. Mm-hmm. No less, I think, than Western worlds. So, who knows?
Yes. On that point, and then we can wrap up. It was interesting in this very thing, they talk about that and how American slavery, the system of American enslavement, was more brutal than any other because a racial construct was used to justify it. That slaves weren't human.
Weren't human.
Yes. And they weren't, it wasn't warfare. We weren't in war with them and then enslaved the losers. We went to another continent and enslaved a group of people to build the wealth of our nation in order to become independent. So it was, I know it's uncomfortable talking about this stuff. Of course it is. At first, it's not really uncomfortable for me now. But if we don't tell these stories, we can't make things right.
That's right. The first step is the truth, and going from
awareness.
There. Yeah.
Awareness is the first step.
That's right. Awareness. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me, Erik.
Well, I'm so
pleasure.
Pleased.
We got to have an adult conversation. No one interrupted to tell us about Legos.
Yeah.
Or something else. Or equally interesting. But it was this is probably the longest grown-up conversation I've had with you in years. So
I think you're right. It's so enjoyable. I love you. You're so
I love wonderful. You too.
And thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you for being here.
Yep.
Love you.
Love you. See you soon.
Okay. Bye.